AI and open source has been really, really interesting lately because open source software is getting harvested by AI, like pretty much everything on the web. The quote unquote open source licenses that are being used are not your traditional licenses, oftentimes. And then organizations that are using open source licenses for their AI are they don't necessarily have the same they have the same money behind them, right? As going in and looking at Facebook, for instance. And so what we're seeing is that you've got real questions about not only the licensing around artificial intelligence, but also the licensing around what it produces and what it can harvest. And this is going to change the open source landscape dramatically because open source software is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. It's shifted away from what I would call the innovation boom of the last decade in open source into a maintainership role and an economic growth mindset. And these sorts of shifts, when we combine them with AI, really mean that a lot of the reason it's happening is because the venture money is going into AI now, right? The venture money isn't going towards open source projects anymore. And that was fueling a huge amount of the open source growth when revenue should have been fueling that open source growth. And oftentimes it wasn't. And now that money is shifted. And so a lot of these open source organizations are struggling or needing to make dramatic changes. And subsequently, the AI push is really gray as to how it's going to be applied in a lot of cases. I mean, what you guys are doing is fantastic because quality is focused on a very targeted solution. But so much of what is happening in AI land is the big platform wars. And until we have really effective targeted solutions that are human consumable, we're not going to see what a lot of the future brings. Once those targeted solutions evolve, I would say we're going to see a resurgence in how open source responds and a resurgence in targeted open source solutions that follow on the heels of more and more of these larger systems. But at that point, I also think that the ecosystem around open source is going to evolve. The licenses are going to change again. And the way that we consume open source will shift again. So all in all, I see a lot of change, and I probably just don't have enough time to go into a lot of detail on where I think a lot of the levers are that are going to be pulled over the next few years.